All right, this is the FHA and VA disclosure form. If you're getting a mortgage with either FHA or the VA, you got to fill this one out. This video is being done from the buyer's perspective, but if you're the seller watching this, you'll still kind of get the gist of the form. All right, let's get into what we need to do here. Oh, first I'll point out the wizard at the top of the page here should be green, which means it's turned on by default. So the wizard is what shows the explanation and walks you through the form. You can turn it off and still see the descriptions, but they're not as pretty, and turned off won't walk you through the form. So however you want to do it, it's up to you, but just be aware that that's what it does. I'll also point out that clicking the X in the corner here turns off the wizard, which is kind of annoying, but just know that that's what's happening. If you want to close a box, just click outside the box to close it like that. All right, so let's get into it. First line we come to is the buyer or seller name. Again, we're doing it from the buyer's perspective here, so let's just fill in this form. We are John and Jane Smithsonian. And the property address, 123. Enter the address. Then you come to the initials. We are, like I've mentioned in some of the other videos, since John and Jane Smith, they both have the same initials. They're both JS. Just for demonstration purposes here, we're going to do different initials just so you can see how the initials work. So for John, instead of JS, we'll do John. And if there's a second party, don't click the sign button because that'll automatically populate it with the last initial that we did. So we're going to do new, add new signature, and that's the initial. And instead of JS for Jane Smith, just do JAN and sign. And you can see here why we separated out the initial fields, because this timestamp might cover up the initial there. So that's why they're spaced, why they're not in the center. All right, now we're getting into the main part of the document here. I'm only going to touch on the things that are relevant to filling out this form, but you'll see a lot of writing here. Just be sure to read it. Please pause the video, read each section, come back to it. Just because I don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not important. So, all right, part one, you got some definitions. Part two, that's short, but it's very important. So the FHA or VA will not lend if the value of the home is too low. So they need to make it above a certain price, because if you default, they want to make sure they can get their money back by selling the home. So you're already going to get an appraisal from the bank, but these loans require you to have a separate appraisal, which is, basically an inspection. It's done by the agency, FHA or VA, and you're going to have to pay for that as well. So they'll send someone out to do the appraisal. Maybe they find something that needs repair. And usually they'll just do basic stuff, like maybe it's peeling paint or wood rot, and they would require that to be fixed before they approve the loan. So I actually did a VA refinance recently, and they had me replace some crumbling sidewalk, and it's kind of a pain. I mean, do you know how much it costs for concrete people just to come out, even for a little thing? It's a lot. So I got some Quikrete and fixed it right up, but the whole process is kind of annoying, but that's the way it is. So what can you do? Anyway, in this section, you are asking the seller for a certain dollar amount that the seller will contribute to fix any problems uncovered in the inspection. So here's the problem. Right now, you don't know any repairs that will be needed. You don't know their cost. You don't know if your offer has even been accepted, because you haven't even submitted it yet. So it's not like you even own the house. So you're expected to put a dollar amount here that the seller should pay for these repairs and then you pay whatever is above it, which, remember, you don't own the house, so you have to pay for the repairs, which is kind of crazy. So what we generally do is we usually start at around 500. And this is saying that if something costs, say, let's say 600 to fix, the seller will pay 500 and you'll pay the other 100. But this 500 is kind of just the starting point, and there's bound to be some renegotiations later once the amount of any repairs is revealed. Like if you have to fix something big and it'll cost $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever, you can try to renegotiate that. And of course, the seller can just say no and the deal is off, and then you wasted all that time and money on an inspection, but that's the way it goes. All right, Section 3, it only applies to FHA. So check this box if you're doing an FHA. Now be sure to read all this, but it's basically saying that the home must appraise for the purchase price. So in this line here, we're going to enter the purchase price we're offering for the home, and we'll say it was $200, like we've done in some of the other videos. Now in Section A here, you're going to have to do a little homework. What this line is saying is that you, the buyer, will pay for all the closing fees related to the loan, which is normal, but that the seller has to pay the tax service fee. Why? I don't know. That's just the way it is. The tax service fee is usually a small fee. It's usually like $40 to $50. But the best thing you can do here is to find out the exact amount. And you can do that by calling your lender and find out what that fee is exactly. Like you don't want to put $40 just because I said $40 and it turns out to be higher, or you don't want to put like $100+ just to cover all your bases and to scare off the seller, because then they'll just reject your offer. So we'll just put 50 here, just as a guesstimate. And that's it for FHA. Be sure to read through it all. Now, box 4, you only do that if you're getting a VA. So you don't have to fill out anything in this section. Be sure to read it, but you don't have to fill anything out. But pay attention to part A here. What this is saying is I guess it's especially tricky for sellers, because this line is saying that the seller, not you, the buyer, the seller will pay for the WDO inspection, that's like the termite inspection, and a lot of fees related to the mortgage. And that's not cheap. And the sellers usually aren't too happy to learn this. So, remember, this is a negotiation. The seller might come back with a counteroffer saying they'll pay up to like 3% or 2% or whatever percent of the home's purchase price in these fees, because they can add up. And part B is saying that if the appraiser needs something fixed and the estimate is more than that 500 we wrote in that line in Section 2 earlier, then the seller has 3 days to tell you if they're going to pay it or not. Then you can decide what to do at that point. As the buyer, you can pay it if you want, or if you want to cancel, you can, but you got to do it in writing. So that's it for the VA section. Now moving on to Section 5, which applies to both the VA and FHA. It's just saying that if your home doesn't appraise for the amount you indicated, but you still want to go through with the deal, maybe you'll have to pay money out of pocket as the difference between the appraised price and the sales price. But it's just saying that you have 3 days to let the seller know that you're doing it. And last but not least, it's the space for the buyer and seller to sign. If you're the first one to sign, don't worry about there not being another signature, because we're going to pass it on to, say in this case, we'll pass it on to the seller to sign. So signature. And oftentimes this happens. You'll notice that I clicked in there and it populated the last signature that we did. So we're going to replace, add new signature, John Smithsonian, sign, and date. We'll just enter today's date and enter signature. If you click sign, it'll enter John Smithsonian. So we're going to do new signature and Jane Smithsonian, sign, and date. That's it for the VA part. The next page you'll see it automatically scroll to. That's the inspection notice, and it's required for FHA loans. So we just tucked it into this document because you got to get it at some point. So it doesn't hurt to fill it out now. We're going to sign, replace John Smithsonian and enter date, today's date, and then new Jane Smithsonian and enter today's date. All right, and that's about it, really. You hit the, let's click out of that, hit the done button to submit, and yes, it's good to go. I'll also point out that you can kind of see why sellers aren't too excited to receive these offers. You see all the fees they got to pay and the extra stuff they have to do. So if you're the buyer, keep that in mind when you're making your offer. Don't bid too low because that'll make your offer much less attractive. So just a tip. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and thanks. Have a great day. Bye.